Let me lead in by saying the most painful days in Beaumont were the birthdays of my family members. Not my birthday, their birthdays. Missing graduation. Up is 2. Don't get that back.
The Defender Network invited Kirbyjon Caldwell, the former pastor of Windsor Village United Methodist Church, who recently completed his prison term, to join us for a conversation about his past, his present, and his future. The idea or the objective was to reveal what his journey has been like, from the indictment to the prison term, to look at the man today, to see what are some of the challenges and surprises that he's found in public life, and to look at the road ahead of what he sees are his goals and his initiatives. Now, this is more of an inside view to really understand the man himself, the journey he's taken, and where he plans to go. Full disclosure to our audience, I am not interested in a got you moment. Instead, I shared the questions with him in an effort to get deep, thought-provoking answers and not quick responses. So with that, let's get this interview started.
I agreed to do the interview with Houston Defender for a number of reasons. Number one, I have and I've always had a great deal of respect for the newspaper, even before you bought it way back in the day, and surely since that time. Number two, I look forward to sharing the mistakes I made with you so that others might learn from it. Number three, I look forward to telling my story.
Let's begin with some clarity. Talk to me about what actually happened. What was the incident that caused you to be convicted of a crime?
All right. Well, here's the bottom line. I made some mistakes. The primary mistake I made was not doing a sufficient job of vetting the product, the process, the people, and all of that. I don't know if you recall this, Sonny, but during the press conference I held, which I should not have held, by the way, and we can talk about that some more if you'd like, I had in my right hand about 14 or 15 documents. And I said, with clarity, to use your word, I am not guilty because I have 16 contracts in my hand signed by individuals or institutions who have promised to buy the bonds. Little did I know, that if a contract does not have a performance date in it, it is not an enforceable agreement. So I had 16 agreements, none of which had enforceable contracts. The court, I was going to plead not guilty up until about 7 to 10 days prior to the trial date. And then I found out that, and this is a very key word, key phrase. The prosecutors say, well, if you did not know it, you should have known it. And that's what they pin you on. You should have it. Kirbyjon Caldwell, you majored in whatever you majored in, you should have known. You went to business school, you should have known. You've been doing money deals for 5,000 years, you should have known. And that's the clincher. So shame on me. I should have known that there were no performance dates in those contracts. I did not know that, so here we are today.
When you look at the people that you harmed, both emotionally and financially, what have you done and what did you say to them in response to your crime?
So first of all, let me say again, because I don't want anybody to be confused about this. I accept full responsibility for my poor judgment and subsequent illegal actions. Let me also say that it's not like I woke up one morning and said, you know what, today is a great day to go break the law. Let me go out here and bust the law upside the head and see how far I can get away with it. That was not the deal at all. I did not know I was doing that. If anyone had breathed to me that I was breaking the law, I would have stopped and backed up. That was not the case. It is what it is. Period, stop, new paragraph. The persons who were involved in the deal, I didn't know them. I met 2 or 3 of them after they got involved, but my co-defendant was the one who identified and solicited the investors. They were all his friends, colleagues, Sunday school mates, Sunday school, what do you call those? Sunday school folk who went to Sunday school with his high school classmates. I didn't know them. So what am I saying? I didn't know how old they were. I understand that most of them were elderly, and I got hit pretty hard with that when I got indicted. That's the reality. I regret that. I did not know how old they were because I did not know who they were and had never met them. I did, however, pay them back as they asked for their money prior to the indictment. So the total restitution of about $3.4, $3.6 million. Prior to the indictment, I paid back $1 million, slightly over $1 million. So, I mean, it was never my intent to defraud anybody, but given the law of the land, that's what it was, and that's what it is. Again, I accept full responsibility for my actions. And it was never my intent to hurt or harm anyone. And my intent to not hurt or harm anyone, I think, was expressed specifically in the fact that I paid everybody back. They call it restitution. Paid them all back. I paid my half of the restitution and my co-defendant's portion of the restitution. In addition to paying the restitution, I reimbursed the investors, or the government calls them victims. I call them victims. I paid them slightly over $600,000. What does the $600,000 represent? That represents the fees that some investors incurred when they pulled money out of their accounts to invest the money in this deal. So I did all that because A, I thought it was the right thing to do, and B, at the risk of sounding like a Christian, which I am, I didn't want that curse hanging over my children's heads, i.e. I promised to pay somebody back and didn't. So I paid them back. Took every penny that I had to do it, but I did it. I've had numerous persons, including attorneys, say to me, no way in the hell I would have paid those folk all that money back. And I respect that, but that's what I was glad to do, and I would do it again.
Describe your feeling and emotion when you first heard the sentence from the judge.
Ooh-wee. Man. First of all, let me tell you, that's, judges in general, let's forget my judge for a minute. Judges in general have a very unique role in society, as we know. And it's amazing, if not alarming to me, that judges can say, 145 months. And they say it as if it's 145 minutes in federal penitentiary. Let me tell you something. Prior to going to prison, if I heard somebody got a 36-month sentence, I said, 36 months? That's just 36 months. He'll be out in no time. Shoot. 36 months is a long butt time. That's a long time. It was numbing. Numbing. It's as if I had been anesthetized emotionally, mentally, spiritually. That's a very interesting question. So nobody has asked me that. It were as if I was in a bubble and time stood still. And even at that point, call me La La Land or whatever, but you ask me a question, I'm gonna give you the answer. I was hoping and praying that even then, at the 11th hour, that one of the folk who said he would buy the bonds would buy the bonds, at least buy one or two of them, right? And then I'd be able to say, oh yeah, wow, we rolling. But didn't happen.
Talk to me about the first night in prison. Where was your head? What were you feeling? What were you thinking?
As Susette drove me to the federal camp in Beaumont, Texas, we got out of the car, I left the car, walked into what's called R&D, receiving and discharge. I walked into the building. I was about 3 feet beyond the door. And then I realized, shoot, I forgot my readers. My Walgreens specials, which I'd actually gotten from a dollar store. But anyway, the glasses. So I said to the officer, who was very nice, I said, I'm gonna go back to the car and get my readers. He said, oh no, you can't do that. Your wife has to go get them. The minute you report you are, the property of the government, and if you leave, you are an escapee. So technically, I cannot walk 24 feet back into the parking lot to get my readers. That's when I knew, Kirbyjon, you're not in Kansas anymore. You are in prison, my man.
You've talked a little bit about your experience, but drill down a little more about the physical, spiritual, and emotional experience that you had in prison.
During my late 60s, as an age, 66, 7, 8, 9, I suffered a stroke, a detached retina in my right eye, and was diagnosed with cancer. Late 60s. So you're going into prison where there's nominal health care, arguably. And I'm thinking to myself, okay, you had these significant, life-threatening health challenges in your mid-late 60s. When you hit your 70s, without the medical center, brother, you could die. That's what demons were saying to me. Blessedly, when I was in prison, son of Messiah Giles, I may have had one headache, maybe. My knees used to ache sometimes. No knee aches. I caught COVID 1.5 times. I say 1.5 because I had it one time for sure. I think I had it twice. because of my medical condition, particularly cancer treatment, my oncologist advised that I not take the shot, the vaccine. So I'm in prison, fully exposed to COVID, folk dying at the low. I was not able to take the vaccine. Yeah. I never thought I would die particularly, but I was prepared to die, to the point that I sent my homegoing service celebration, the order of service, to my attorney. Said, if I die, this is what I want to do, whatever. But the Lord protected me physically every step of the way. Emotionally and mentally, I'll just put those two together. There were several times during the 1,171 days that I was in Beaumont that I thought I would get out because people were working to try to get me out. So you think you're gonna get out, you're on a high, then you don't. You think you're gonna get out, you're on a high, then you don't. Well, every time, let me own it, every time I didn't, it was another low. Just went lower and lower and lower and lower, as if there were no bottom. And one of the guys I work with at 5-Star Hospice had a great analogy when I shared that thought. He said, yeah, it's like being in a building that's being constructed, listen to this, upside down. Instead of the building going up towards heaven, the building is going down towards hell. I'll never forget that imagery as long as I live, because that's exactly how I was feeling. And then when I was at my lowest point, I've got to tell you this, because this is directly related to your question, the emotional and mental uplift. A new culinary instructor came to the camp. And the Lord literally used her to save my life, socially, emotionally, and mentally. And in fact, she was at the church the other day in the Sunday afternoon. She made a very enlightening statement, which I didn't realize, but when she said it, I surely believed it, because she wouldn't lie anyway. She said, the person you're looking at right now, referring to me, is not the person I met 2 years or so ago in Beaumont. And she was right.
What did you learn about Kirbyjon, about yourself, about people, and about God?
So let's do about yourself first. And I text this message to the children several times. I said to them, you're stronger than you think. You never know how strong you are until you have to use the strength you have. So as I shared that with them, I realized, Kirbyjon, you're telling them that, but that's true of you too. You know, the Lord gives you that little extra to help you to make it when you didn't think you would or could. So I learned that I'm stronger than I thought. I learned that I learned about faith and grace in a totally different way. Particularly faith, for instance. It's one thing to claim you have it. It's one thing to have it, for that matter. It's something else to use it. And I never had to use my faith like I did in Beaumont. And specifically, I said, look on your face. Use it to make it from May 7th to May 8th, just one day at a time, just putting one foot in front of the other. Just telling yourself, you can get past this. Tomorrow is coming, no matter how slow today may be. You can do all things I'm preaching now, through Christ who strengthens you, even if the food is south of acceptable standards. I knew this all the time, but now I lived it. You are not what they say you are. You are bigger than your mistake. While some may define you based on your most recent misstep or mistake, God does not see you that way. Therefore, it's very important for you to not see you that way. And your friends, your real friends, will see you as the Lord sees you and see you as they know you are, not as you have been painted by society in general, or the system in particular.
How did your faith sustain you or evolve while you were in prison?
That when shortly after I was indicted, I was no longer, at that point, the pastor. I was defrocked, as I should have been. I'm not complaining about that at all. And I became a lay pastor, L-A-Y pastor. No longer clergy, but now lay pastor. I became that then, I'm still that now. But the faith part, and it was so interesting, you lead with the pastor, you led with the pastor title because, wow, the Lord just spoke through you, Sonny. The faith part transcends, cuts through, traverses, and at the same time even imbues or feels whatever your title is. Be you lay pastor, be you clergy, be you bishop. Your faith has nothing to do with your title. And one of the things I look forward to doing, this is not your question, let me say it anyway, it's related to it, is sharing my faith with others, sharing with others how they can grow in their faith without going to Beaumont, and how they can, it sounds kind of perfunctory to say, be who I want you to be, so let me translate it and say, identify booby traps, identify hellhounds, overcome those booby traps, process and deal with those hellhounds, and proceed along the path that the Lord has for you, come hell or high water, and accomplish all, not most, not some, all of the promises that God has your name on. So it depends on what was going on, right? So let's call it, didn't have a job and then did have a job. When I did not have a job, the day went by like, molasses, terribly slow, terribly boring. I would get up, let me tell you what I did not do. I did not get up for breakfast, because breakfast was not worth getting up for, right? That was at 6 o'clock, 6:15, sometimes they call it 5:45, maybe call it 6:30. If not, this is gonna sound interesting to you maybe, but if they had oatmeal, I'd get up for that. But we didn't have oatmeal very often. So I would get up 7:30, 8, and when I did not have a job, Sunday Messiah jobs, I don't know what I did. I did a lot of reading. Lunch was around 10:15, 10:30, yes. Go to lunch, come back and read. I always walked. Always found time and space to get my walk in because the doctors wanted me to walk. And sometimes the space I had to walk in was smaller than the gray area of this carpet. But I'd walk in the space I had to walk in. Your lungs and your legs don't know the difference. Get in at 30, 35 minutes. And as I said, time went by slowly. Now, but sometimes I had a job, right? I had 2 or 3 jobs while I was there. And I liked the jobs because that helped the time go faster. And when I took I'm gonna tell you in a minute, but let me tell you, the culinary class, when I took that culinary 10-week class, those 10 weeks went by like, where'd it go? Went by real fast. So we were in there from 8 o'clock to 10:30 every day, and it was just super. We did a little cooking, and again, our culinary instructor treated us like persons, not prisoners. She talked to us like individuals, not inmates. So it was just a lot more enjoyable, civil even. So I had several jobs. Got fired from one of them. And
Doing what? What job did you get?
Okay, so I had a job at the loading docks somewhat. So over at the load, there was one way in and one way out of the loading dock, right? So there's a little guardhouse there. So I was the orderly for the guardhouse. What's an orderly? Janitor. I was a janitor at the guardhouse, right? And my grandmother always taught me, whatever you do, do it well. So I did the floors, I did the sweeping, did the dusting, cleaned the toilets. I was good at it.
When you look in the mirror today and you compare the Kirbyjon of yesterday to the Kirbyjon of today, what has changed?
More hair, less wrinkles, more wisdom. I don't know for sure. I'll have to ask my family members this, but I may have more wit, as in a sense of humor. I'm not sure about that. I am more resilient, more determined to finish strong. I am an introvert. I'm not shy, but I'm an introvert. As a result of that, I don't mentor well. But if someone is willing to roll with me and ask me questions, I'll tell them everything I know. I'm more willing to do that. And also, I'm more in touch with the fact that I am now in the 4th quarter of my life. By the way, the physician in Beaumont said to me unsolicitedly about 2 weeks before I left, he said, well, according to the blood work, your blood work, you should live to be 98, 99 years old. I said, I received that. Let's go. So whatever I can do to help folk between now and 98, 99, count me in. So one of our local television affiliates, we all know who it is, ABC, KTRK, Channel 13, bless their hearts, bless their hearts. They reported on the $3.6 million fraud case. That's 90 years old, but that's fair. They did not, NOT, report that I paid everybody back. I'm told they didn't report that because that doesn't sell papers or sell, on clicks. Okay. But what I could not wrap my mind around was why they wanted to say I stole money from elderly members. Now I understand he's since printed a retraction, but you know how that goes. 9 million people hear about, I stole money from elderly members, and 5 people read the retraction, right? So, Sonny, I was telling Susette the other day, and I mentioned this to your son earlier, of all the hellaciousness I've been through, not one time did I feel ashamed because my conscience was clear and I knew I'd done the right thing. The only time I felt ashamed was yesterday, as this lie that I stole money from elderly members soaked into my interior life. Kirbyjon, why would you feel ashamed if you knew it wasn't true? I felt ashamed even though I didn't, even though I knew it wasn't true, because it was that whole, in my mind, I see somebody walking down the street and they say, there's that Caldwell who stole money from elderly people who were their members. It's the elderly members part that really got me. Stealing, bad enough. That's what fraud is. Anyway, stealing sounds like the word stealing, fraud. There's a little bit of difference there. But elderly and members, oh man. Sonny, I was so upset about that. I was so angry, I was. And again, he since printed, a retraction that nobody read. But man, so at the risk of sounding, I don't want to spiritualize everything or most things, but the enemy knows that that's where my Achilles heel is, my soft spot is for elderly and members. What kind of preacher would steal from his members? Elderly. Oh man, that's not me, that's not me, that's not me. And it just hurt my heart. But blessedly, the members, the folk who know me, came to my defense on social media, as you know, bless God for that. But I couldn't understand it. I could understand it. I could not understand it. Evil is irrational.
What did it feel like when you stood in that pulpit or on that stage and addressed the congregation for the first time in more than 5 years?
It was almost surreal. And you know what was interesting? In a way, Sonny, let me back up a few days. The first day I walked into the building, right? After 1,500 days, 1,171 days in Beaumont, 392 days home confinement. I walked into the KBC, and it was strange because in a way, it were as if I hadn't left. And I asked myself, I go to therapy every Thursday at 2:00. And so I'm learning how to do a lot of things. So I asked myself, I said, self, why is it that it's as if in some ways you had never left? You know what the answer is? During those long, lonely, frustrating, and disquieting days in Beaumont, my mind would travel. And I learned how to encourage my mind to go certain places. And one of the places that I would encourage my mind to visit were places of comfort and joy. And one of the places of comfort and joy was KBC. So while I hadn't been there physically in years, I visited it every day. So when I walked into the stage, same thing. Now what was really kind of, telling is I had members that say, man, it's like you hadn't left.
Tell me a little about how your congregation has responded to you.
It was great. Very warm, very loving, very, affirming, loving, accepting, boy, we miss you, just love. As a matter of fact, one lady who had never been to Windsor, who came to worship service and stayed for the fireside chat afterwards, said, and I quote, "I've never felt this much love in a room in my life." And she's in her late 40s, early 50s. So that speaks to, obviously, the grace of God, but it also speaks to the culture of the church.
Now we're going to shift from your public family to your private family. Talk about what you felt and what you think your children and family felt when you went to prison and when you returned from prison.
Let me lead in by saying the most painful days in Beaumont were the birthdays of my family members. Not my birthday, their birthdays. Missing graduation. But there's two. Don't get that back. Thanksgivings, those were painful too, but the Lord blessed me to see another Thanksgiving. Graduations, you don't get those back. My daughter made a statement once. While I was in Beaumont, that just seared my soul. She said, "Daddy, one of the things I think she said, one of the things or the thing that I regret most about your being in Beaumont is that you're missing the opportunity to watch me become a young lady." You don't get that back. So, as you can see, those were the tough parts, and one of my children, is forging his way as an entrepreneur, so I wasn't able to help him with that. Other one was forging his way as a student, having to change schools, any chance to help with that. Driving him to college, didn't get a chance to do that. Whew. All because, I won't say all because, in a sense it is all because I didn't know what a contract was. Didn't know to look for the performance date. And I want to repeat again, I should have known. I accept responsibility for knowing. But I have to confess, in my mind, it's a steep price to pay from my biased perspective. Pastor Susette, has done a phenomenal job, particularly considering all the headwinds. I'm in prison. She didn't expect to pastor the church. There's still sexism in the church. COVID, as you know, COVID, as they used to say in Beaumont, killed, not killed, killed. COVID killed a bunch of churches. And in spite of all that, Windsor's standing strong for it, prepared for the future. And I'm glad to be a part of it as the lay pastor. I'm going to do a lot of preaching, going to do a lot of teaching. Starting this Sunday. But, it was, as one of the members of the family said, I don't know who said this. It's a powerful statement. said, as if, Daddy, it was as if you were dead, but you weren't. Because the closet remains still, places at the dinner table, chair always empty, car in the driveway. It was as if I was dead. Socially, in a sense, maybe I was dead to them in the family dynamic. So that's the big deal.
What are you doing today to rebuild or rekindle or redevelop the relationships with your family, but particularly your children?
Talking, texting, cooking. Look, I'm not a master chef, but nobody goes hungry in the house. And I don't fix a whole lot of different things, but that which I fix, pretty good. Turkey burgers have gotten better too, by the way. A lot of that, but I tell you, Sonny, so while I was there, and this is a partial answer to the question you asked earlier, and I'll use this term intentionally, demons, right? Golfers talk about demons in your shoulders. A lot of times when golfers get ready to hit a shot, you see them go like that, they get an intention, they call them demons in your shoulders. So one of the demons I had to deal with was a spirit of regret. And man, I took a legacy class while I was in Beaumont. That was a great class, but the spirit of regret really hounded me. As good of a father as my children say that I was while they were growing up, I thought about this, I thought about that, I thought about 1,000 things I wish I could have done differently or done more of, but did not do. And now that I'm sitting in Beaumont, I wish that I had. So I had to learn, again, the mental thing, had to learn to not let the regret hounds track me down. So when you regret, you're looking back. When you worry, you're looking forward. If you're not careful, those two demons will wear your butt out. So much so that the worry about tomorrow and regret of yesterday squeeze in on you so fiercely that you have no today.
What now? Are you going to step into a leadership position, or do you have a new path that you plan to approach or unveil?
Well, first of all, I'm working on a book. Books, actually, but I'm working on one book at a time, so I'm working on a book. I think there are books inside of me, so I'm excited about that. In terms of my involvement here in the city, I will be doing a lot of preaching and a lot of teaching as the lay pastor at Windsor Village. I'm going to be very involved in the community as I have been as lay pastor at Windsor Village. I'm also working closely, as you can appreciate and imagine, with the Kingdom Builders Center, the building in which Windsor is located. But the Kingdom Builders Center, KBC, has a mission in and of itself. I'm going to work very closely with that organization as well. So at the end of the day, Sonny, we, and when I say we, I mean Windsor Village, KBC, Kirbyjon Caldwell, Pastor Susette, Windsor Village Church family, and friends. We are going to do all we can to impact, in a positive way, of course, and uplift the community going forward as we have in the past. Now, specifically, what does that look like? I can't tell you right now. I'm still dotting the I's and crossing the T's on a few things, but you will know we're there.
How do you envision working with Susette Caldwell, the senior pastor of Windsor Village United Methodist Church, and your wife, who has held down the fort for the last 5 years.
Between indictment and reporting to Beaumont, I was a lay pastor then. She was a senior pastor. That has not changed. So this is, it's a model that has worked. It's a model that will work. And as I said earlier, in fact, I'm gonna do. I rocked back in my chair. I'm so sorry. I'm gonna do more teaching going forward than I have in the days gone by. Specifically, Wednesday night Bible study, and I'm doing a session on Wednesdays, every Wednesday, for the quote-unquote seniors, of which we now are in that group. I'm going to do a lot more, let's say offer a lot more material online, and of course, online. I'm sorry. Yes, the web, yeah, electronic, and a lot of preaching.
I really want to know, what would the Kirbyjon of today say to the younger Kirbyjon if he had an opportunity?
I would say, and I pause because I thought I knew this, but obviously I did not. Or I knew it, but I fell asleep at the switch. And that is, watch, as my grandma used to say, watch the company you keep. It's just that simple. Watch the company you keep. Now, unless someone is inclined to read between the lines, I'm not throwing any shade on my co-defendant. I accept full responsibility for my judgment and my actions. But hey, you asked the question, what would I tell a younger Kirbyjon? That is exactly what I'd tell that knucklehead.
What message do you have for leaders who have dealt with crisis or with falling out of grace?
Surround yourself with persons who have the highest intellect, the highest integrity, and the highest ingenuity. People who know a lot, people who mean a lot, and have a lot of sense and are good people inside out, and folk who are creative and know how to do stuff. You put those three together, particularly if you have a team, it's an unbeatable combination. And to the extent that, ignorance or greed slides into your team, that's the extent to which you are vulnerable and subject to be annihilated. The number of folk who went to prison in the Old and New Testaments, a whole bunch of folk went to prison in the Old and New Testament. I don't laugh because it's funny, I laugh because it's enlightening. And it just goes to show you how God sees you for who you are, and He does not see you for what you've done. That's a good question. God, and I would go one step farther to say, I hesitate to say this because it sounds a little bit self-serving, but it's true. So since God sees us that way, why can't more of us see one another that way? Why do we define our colleagues by their worst moments? Let me go ahead and dig a semi-grave for myself and say, one reason why people do that is because maybe they want to feel better about themselves. And in order for them to feel better about themselves, they got to put somebody else down. We can't build community like that. At the same time, I think it's awfully important for us to accept responsibility for what we've done, apologize, accept responsibility for it, acknowledge our role in it, and seek atonement. 4 critical A's, right? And but if you don't apologize, you cannot get to atonement. So I think we apologize for what we do, not necessarily for who we are. Not necessarily forget that. We do apologize for what we do, not for who we are. And we should never even confuse our own selves with believing what I do is who I am.
Finally, how do you want your legacy to be defined?
So there's a book in the Bible called Micah. It's a minor prophet. I think it's the 7th verse, 7th chapter, it might be the 6th chapter, 8th verse. So I want to answer the first part of the question with that, and I'll share it, just tell you essentially what it says. It says, "Tell my enemies, do not rejoice over me. Though I fall, I will rise. Though I sit in darkness, the Lord will be my light." Which is to say, clearly I have fallen. Clearly, in a sense, I sit in darkness. But my prognosis is not my diagnosis. And the trajectory is forward, futuristic, and hopeful. So with that as a foundational thought, I would say, again, as fallen and as dim as things appear to be now, when it's, when the fat lady has sung, and as the old folk used to say, when the old Baptist preacher would say, when I sung my last song, and I prayed my last prayer, the folk would say, my goodness, what a transformation.